All right, just tell us when Beagled.
Good to go.
All right, so welcome everyone, and sorry for the delays. We had some technical problems. As I was saying earlier, this is going to be a team review live stream. We're going to be doing Nightmare and regional team reviews, and this will probably be the last team review live stream for those two cups. And our next live stream will likely be a initial Rainbow Cup meta analysis stream. So stay tuned for that. And before we jump into the team review, we had some questions about Claydol within the Nightmare meta and what move set to run on it. So, Justin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, definitely. So with the addition of Earth Power to Claydol's charge move pool, the slight energy cost reduction really makes Extra Sensory look like the better fast move. With Extra Sensory Earth Power together, Claydol is now able to either win or tie all the dark poisons in one shield, which previously it lost and could only really beat those in no shields by getting to an earthquake. But now it's able to win both no shields and one shields, which really helps boost Claydol's matchup coverage and sort of makes up for the loss that it typically has to Xatu and some other ones. So confusion,
Right.
confusion definitely still hits harder, but extra sensory confusion is just a little too slow to have that advantage, one shield advantage against the dark poisons.
Right, because if you're running Confusion with Earth Power, you're still going to lose this matchup to the Dark Poisons. But
Right.
if you switch that to Extra Sensory, then you're able to beat or tie them, which is a pretty big swing.
Yeah, that's
And also, I've been playing with Claydol because it's in my team. And like even in your bad matchups, like if you get chapped by like an Alolan Raticate, for example, being able to fire off those Earth powers, you can chunk down its HP by
yeah.
quite a bit. Um, and make them. It means that they can't really farm as much. And it's pretty nice because before you had to rely on Gyro Ball for that like neutral damage and like faster firing move.
Mm-hmm.
And Gyro Ball just isn't that good, really. But Earth Power is 5 less energy than Gyro Ball, gets stab, and hits harder. So it's a lot better for those neutral matchups. And another thing to note is that now you use Gyro Ball for almost all your matchups. Or not Gyro Ball, you use Earth Power for almost all your matchups. And the only thing that you really need Gyro Ball for is for like the Xatu matchup. Or I guess like Murkrow if you see that.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else to add?
Gyro Ball. That's pretty much the primary purpose it serves. And one last point: extra sensory also does slow down the Tox farm a little bit. So now you're able to come out of like a Toxicroak matchup with 70 energy banked rather than 48 energy banked, which means you already have an Earth Power, ready to go.
Yeah, and the other thing that Earth Power gives you is it gives you a better Poliwrath matchup because before Earth Power, um, a I think Bubble Poliwrath, or maybe it was all Poliwraths. Do you remember Poly? Were able to beat Extra Sensory Claydol.
I'm not sure actually. I can check real quick.
But anyways, the point is that pre Earth Power, um, Poliwrath had a very good matchup with Extra Sensory Claydol. Because Extra Sensory just didn't do enough damage. And then Gyro Ball is resisted, and Earthquake's just a lot of energy. But with Gyro Ball, it gives you a better matchup. Granted, you can still lose it, but it usually, at least against Hydro Pump Poliwrath, I know Poliwrath needs to shield bait to win. And I'm not sure how the Ice Punch matchup plays out. But either way, it gives you a better Poliwrath matchup.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how like just that slight reduction in energy costs really helps, going from like that 65 charge Earthquake to 55 Earth Power. Really swings several matches.
One small thing to add onto that as well. The only change you really need to watch out for if you change Extrasensory to Confusion is
Brandon, you cut out.
better.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but I missed what the point was. So what you
Yeah,
were adding?
I didn't say the point yet. With Extrasensory over Confusion, since you do kill Toxicroak slower, if they do have a 1 or even 2 counter advantage on you and you switch into them, then they can actually get off a Mud Bomb before you can get off a Gyro Ball. So you may need to be aware of your health going into that. And even if they do get off the Mud Bomb, it does about 25% to you, so just keep in mind that if your Claydol is low enough health, you may not be able to survive the Mud Bomb and then all of the oncoming counters afterwards in order to fire off an Earth Power once Toxicroak goes down.
Right,
sure.
that's a good point.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
a good point.
Extrasensory does have the drawback that it doesn't hit as hard. So, like against Toxicroak, that's kind of a pro and a con because Confusion kills it a lot faster, which is like good if you just need to like chunk it down, like like late game and you have a weakened Claydol or something. Confusion's better, but like Polly said before, the Extrasensory slows down that farm and lets you like is better in like the early and mid game because it lets you farm more energy for the next matchup. So there's definitely trade-offs, but it does seem like that Extrasensory Earth Power picks up a lot more coverage, and I think is makes Claydol a lot better than the Confusion version, which is basically limited to Toxicroak and Alolan Raichu counter that has some late game potential. But with the Extrasensory Earth Power, it has a lot more flexibility. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, I think that's good.
All right, so let's hop into team review, starting with Nightmare. And Justin, you want to read off the first team?
Yeah. Let me tag.
Beagle already tagged him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just saw that. All right. Yeah. So Trainer Ramamco, their team is a 3P. We're gonna start with triple psychics, then move to triple darks, and then 2/2/2s. So Trainer Manko's team is Xatu, Alolan Raichu, Claydol, Alolan Raticate, Spiritomb, and Toxicroak.
Okay, so I mean, looking at the psychics, in my opinion, that is the 3 preferred psychics to run in a 3P team. Toxicroak is very standard, but the big thing that jumps out to me is Spiritomb. I think that Spiritomb in a 3P team is kind of risky because it means that they could potentially have a dark, because generally their darks are going to beat your psychics, and all darks beat Spiritomb. So that means to begin with, they're most likely going to have a dark that can beat 4 of your team. And depending what dark they're running, their dark might also be able to beat your other dark. So, like in terms of this team, like an
like Shiftry.
Like yeah, I mean, I guess Xatu helps with Shiftry some.
Yeah, but I mean, Shift does hit Clay and Walls, Alolan Raichu, so.
Right, yeah, so Shiftry would give you some problems because it's going to have really good matchups against 4 of your 6. And Alolan Muck will also have decent matchups against 5 of your 6. Granted, Claydol with Earth Power now, I think beats Alolan Muck. but it's still just kind of a risky position to be in my opinion. I think Spiritomb does better in other team compositions.
Yeah, and then also Alolan Raichu had the advantage over Alolan Muck in the one shield. So I mean, it's kind of something you might be able to play around some, but yeah, Spiritomb really usually works best in 3D as sort of that additional tox counter.
Right. I mean, I think if you did want to run a 3P with Dark, or with Spiritomb rather, that Alolan Raticate, I mean, I think this would be the team to do it with.
Definitely.
Because, like we said, the Darks that Alolan Raticate loses to are Shiftry, which gets beat by Xatu, and Alolan Muck, which Claydol and Alolan Raichu match up pretty well with. So, yeah.
Yeah,
actually,
I think
slight change though. He mentioned he posted a second team, so he actually swapped out Alolan Raichu for Poliwrath, so now he's running a
Okay,
standard
well, it looks
2-2-2
like his
set.
second team is under
it's
2-2-2, so we'll cover it later.
Yeah, we can cover that later.
Yep.
But yeah, I agree though. I think if you're going to run 3P with Tomb, this is probably the best setup. Should we move on to the next person?
Yep.
Cool. So, EE53, their team is Xatu, Alolan Raichu, Claydol, Drape, and Alolan Raticate, and then Toxicroak.
I'm just going to say that this is my team, and so far I've won 2 tournaments with it. I know Tristan's running the same team as I am, and I know Mason won his tournament with it as well, and this is probably one of the most balanced 3P teams you can have, with your oddball, depending on how you play and your strategy, being either Alolan Raticate or even Claydol. But, I mean, speaking from personal experience, my core 3 that I ran were either Xatu, Toxicroak, and Drapion, or Drapion, Toxicroak, Alolan Raichu, just for the power that I can get off, and all 3 of those are leads or closers, or can just pressure as much as possible. I've
Yeah,
had tons of success with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, the advantage with this setup is the team is pretty flexible. So there's a lot of different trios that you can run with it. And like Brandon said, both he, I, and Mason have been running it. So obviously it's a team that we like. I think we also talked about it on the last stream. So you can listen into the last stream for a little more analysis on it. But the only thing to note about it is that it is a little bit soft about to opposing Alolan Raticate, where your best answers to it are Toxicroak in the mirror match. So that's just something to be aware of. It's not like a crippling weakness, but it's just something you have to play around a little bit.
Yeah, and Raticate and Drapion are 2 of the best darks, so I think that's why this team, has had some success, is because it gives you that flexibility for bringing either one of the 2 best darks, likely in the whole cup, based on the opposing team.
Just an aside on my team, for Drapion, I know that we recommend the standard moveset of Crunch and Aqua Tail. I ran Sludge Bomb instead of Crunch for mine, partially because I ran out of charge TMs.
You cut out again, Brandon. But I know what Brandon was going to say is that the standard moveset is running Crunch and Aqua Tail, but he ran Sludge Bomb and Aqua Tail instead, which gave up a little bit of coverage against Psychic types, but it allowed him to spec his Drapion to better counter Alolan Raticate, and even Umbreon, because he had that Sludge Bomb, which just hits harder than Aqua Tail does. So that's how he was able to help to mitigate that weakness to Alolan Raticate that this team often has.
That's pretty interesting.
Was there anything else you wanted to add on that, Brendan, or did I sum up what you were going to say pretty well?
You basically got it all. The only other thing to add is we need a better way to get charged TMs, but that's about it. And I guess from experience, whenever I saw a Spiritomb on an opposing team, I was expecting it to come in against the 3P team, well, against the team that I ran, which is up right now. And there are ways to play around Spiritomb, namely, and like my most common way, while not ideal, would be Thunder Punch and then a Wild Charge follow-up with Alolan Raichu, because with a 2-spark advantage coming into the battle, I can actually get off the Thunder Punch and then the Wild Charge before they can get off the Shadow Ball for the kill. So even if I do sack the Alolan Raichu, I was able to take down a Spiritomb with it.
All right. Justin, do you want to read off the next team?
Yeah, I can. So that's Brady Shady, 6476. It's Zatu, Alolan Raichu, Claydol with Shiftry as the only dark, and then 2 fighters this time with Toxicroak and Pop. And let me check moveset real quick.
I think he's typing, so I think he's going to tell us what moveset.
Oh, awesome.
Brady Shady, you should be able to talk.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hey, what question did y'all have?
What moveset are you running on Poliwrath?
So it's a Bubble, Ice Punch, and Power Up Punch right now.
Okay.
Cool.
I feel like, though, I'm very weak to several things. I'm not sure what. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I like Bubble on Poliwrath. I mean, that helps with the Claydol matchup a little bit. And then, with the Ice Punch, it's able to hit back Zatu a little bit. Yeah. It really helps. Yeah. Helping with the Zatu matchup is big since Zatu hits a lot of your team, covering like Clay, Tox, and Shiftry, as well as the Mirror. So having that helps a little bit. Generally, I prefer 1 fighter and 2 darks with the 3 psychic teams. But Shiftry is able to hit a lot of other darks. I don't see like any huge holes. I mean, obviously, you're a little weak to Zatu, 4 out of 6, a little weak to Spiritomb, 4 out of 6. But I think the biggest thing is, you might become more predictable in your 3s because you only have Shiftry to bring.
Another weakness I'm seeing is to opposing Shiftry, because Shiftry's going to beat your Poliwrath. It's going to beat your Claydol. It walls your Alolan Raichu, and it has a mirror match with your own Shiftry.
Yeah, good call.
Okay, so I have a A-Rat. Should I throw that in there somewhere?
Yeah, I think
Um,
Alolan Raticate maybe in place of Poliwrath.
Yeah, so you'd have to pick if you wanted to run if you want to keep running with 3 psychic team, then I think you have to drop Poliwrath. Um, or you could go for the balanced 2-2-2 approach, in which case you'd be dropping one of the psychics.
Right.
I'd probably drop a psychic because I really like Poliwrath how fast it is. Honestly, that's my opinion. Um,
Okay, yeah.
but
So
I
if you like Poliwrath, then the 2-2-2 approach is probably going to be better for you.
okay.
Do you
Um,
have any dark poisons like a Skuntank or an Alolan Muck
I
or a
have
Drapion?
I have Skuntank and I have Muck for sure. Um, Muck needs a fast TM on it for sure, and I have Drapion. It's just I'm rural area and low on dust, so it won't get the second moveset in time at all.
Okay, then yeah, I wouldn't run Drapion unless you have the 2 moves. But
Right.
Polly and B Gold, what do you guys think? Do you think the Alolan Muck or the Alolan Raticate is a better addition here?
Hmm. I think you could go. I think you could go Raticate. Yeah, I think I like Raticate better. So Shift covers opposing Raticates, as well as Umbreon, and then if you keep Claydol, that'll help with the Alolan Muck
Oh,
matchup.
I'm
So
keeping Claydol for sure. I like the
yeah,
Earth Power moveset.
so I would drop maybe if you want to go 2-2-2. I'm saying I would drop maybe Alolan Raichu and sub in Alolan Raticate. So now, even though both your darks lose to Alolan Muck, you do have that coverage in Claydol as well as your
Right, he
two
has
two
Claydol and he
fighters.
has 2 fighting too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Um, is there another option besides Raichu?
Well, there's the other option of dropping Claydol, and then you wouldn't bring
Oh
in
yeah, that one.
Raticate, you'd bring in Alolan Muck instead, because Raichu would help
Right.
cover Xatu, and then you can use Muck as a shift tree counter, so to speak, and kind of bait out your dark types with you're still 2 psychics, and Alolan Muck can still bait out Toxicroak, but depending on what moveset you have, it could actually change how you play around with it as well.
Interesting. Okay, I'll have to think about that. Uh,
I mean, or you can drop Poliwrath, like we said.
Yeah.
So it
right.
seems like Alolan Raichu, Claydol, or Poliwrath are probably going to be the ones to drop.
Right. The
Okay.
main thing is you don't want to drop Xatu, because if you drop Xatu,
Oh
or
no,
say
no. Yeah,
yeah,
I won't drop Xatu.
because if you run Alolan Raichu and Claydol, then those both get walled hard by Shift Tree. So you kind of need Xatu in there. Um,
Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you. I'll go look into that.
all right.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
I
Yeah.
might DM you later, Be Gold. LOL.
So who's the next team then?
Sebastian Ale, it looks like.
Okay, cool. All right, Sebastian Ale. If one of you guys could tag him.
Hello. No. Okay, I'm here. No problem.
It's Xatu, Alolan Raichu, Claydol, Drapion, Alolan Raticate, and Toxicroak. So this is the same team we talked about.
Yeah, the 3P.
Yeah. Did you have any questions for us, or did what we
Yeah,
talked about before cover it?
I actually wrote down some questions in the team submission channel, but I can ask here anyway.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. Just let us know what were the questions.
because of the regionals, I didn't have time to look into the nightmare chat a lot. So uh, I I didn't know that there was a a breakpoint for Alolan Radigate, and I wanted to know which one may be better overall, like the bulky Eradicate or the attacker Eradicate?
So the attack Eradicate, if you hit that breakpoint, is able to flip that Alolan Muck matchup.
Right.
Um,
Just one shield.
yeah, the one shield against Alolan Muck.
Yeah.
For Alolan, I don't remember all the numbers, but for Alolan Muck's under a certain defense stat, which most of them are under that, but there's still some that are gonna have a higher
110
defense.
defense.
Okay, so yeah, so basically, Alolan Muck's over 110 defense are still gonna negate that breakpoint. That being said, being able to flip that Alolan Muck matchup, I mean, it is pretty nice. But with this team composition, you're not terribly worried about Alolan Muck because you have Alolan Raichu, which is able to beat Alolan Muck in the one shield. You have Claydol, which can beat it in the 0 and 1 shields. You have Drapion, which has a favorable matchup. And you have Toxicroak. So
Okay.
you're not terribly worried about Alolan Muck. So you don't
Because
necessarily need the Attack Rat. I mean, it's a nice
you know,
thing to have.
I actually got them both. I have a high attack Raticate, but that it's not completely powered up. But the bulky one, it's like ready to go. So I wanted to know if I could just stick to the bulky Raticate and use it anyway.
Yeah, I think so. Um, like I said, you don't need that breakpoint because the rest of the team covers Alolan Muck pretty well. That being said, there's obviously trade-offs in general because the attack rat, just in general, is going to hit a little bit harder. Like I screamed against someone who had an attack rat, and some of those hyper fangs just hit a lot harder than I was expecting because it had the entire attack. But then on the flip side, it's going to die faster too. So
There's actually
Yeah,
a Drapion breakpoint too, with Infestation.
oh really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it basically just does
so
one less damage.
if you have like enough defense,
Yeah, it usually
that's
doesn't
what you're
matter
talking about.
because you end up winning with Eradicate anyways, but if you are really worried about that bulk loss with the attack weighted one, you can try to lean off and find the defense breakpoint.
So
I know my personal
this
rat
is
actually does hit it.
another question that I had was about um how can I take on the already very popular Three Dark team. I know that Big Old was talking about it a bit ago, but I wasn't really paying too much attention. So no, it was like I was doing other things.
I
So
mean,
I did.
it's. I mean it. I mean, there's no like cookie cutter way to approach any specific team, but I mean, there's a variety of things you can run. You know, you can run. Maybe you run a team with two. In your trio, you run double dark. Um, that can help combat a 3D team, or I mean, it kind of just depends on what they end up running against you. Um, so it's hard to like say for sure. I don't know. What do you guys think,
Because
Justin and
uh,
Brandon?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
I
agree. And
was
I think maybe it sort of depends on, they have more flexibility on what dark they can pick against you. But, I mean, maybe if you're worried about that, maybe you lean towards a more balanced 2-2-2 team as well. That's another possibility.
not, well. I mean, I really like the three psychic types I'm choosing because Raichu hits so hard and Satu is like mandatory at this point in the meta, and Claydol just seems very good too. So I wouldn't really like to drop any of them, but I just wanted to know if there was like a, a specific strategy to taking taking on the 3 dark team, like because people usually use Spiritomb as a safe switch, but and I guess I could use Eradicate against Spiritomb.
Right.
I
Yep.
mean, the thing is that I don't know. I've done a decent number of scrims, and I've scrimmed against people running 3 dark teams, and I haven't really had that much of a problem with it. Because just because they're running 3 darks doesn't necessarily dictate any of what they're going to play. Like, they're running 3
Mhm.
darks, but they could be running a balanced line of 1-1-1. They could be running 2 darks in their 3. They could be running 2 psychics in their 3. Like, it just kind of varies.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
see.
I mix it up too. Sometimes I'll run 2 darks and a psychic against them, or I'll run a balanced 1-1-1 lineup, or 2 psychics and Toxicroak, or it just kind of varies. Like, just because you're running 3 darks, or just because someone's running 3 psychics, doesn't necessarily indicate which 3 mons they're going to be bringing. So there's no like cookie cutter way to deal with the team, but
Yeah.
there's a
Maybe
variety of
maybe
team compositions in your trio that you can run.
maybe not the team of 3, but if people sometimes if they see like a predominant type, they usually go with the safer pick. Like for example, if you see 3 psychic types, some people will lean towards using Spirit Zone maybe because it's safer.
I mean, sure. I don't know if I'd agree with that because Spiritomb gets walled by all the other dark types.
Right.
So,
I mean, I
it's
think
hard.
so. Like most of those teams going up against a 3P team, right? Like Spiritomb generally would win 4 out of 6. It would beat the 3 psychics, and then it beats Toxicroak, but it would lose to the other 2 darks, as well as generally like if you're bringing another fighter, like say Lucario, like Lucario would also beat it. So I think it just
That
like Tristan was saying, it just sort of depends on what 3 you run and what 3 they run.
Right, but I mean, if you're expecting them to run Spiritomb, then running a trio with 2 darks in it is a viable option.
Yeah.
But
running-
just because they have Spiritomb doesn't mean they're going to bring it. And just because they have 3 darks doesn't mean they're going to bring any darks. Like, they might run 2 psychics and a fighting type against you. And then you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to know for sure. What were you going to say,
the
Polly?
I was just gonna say that's where like running, say like Alolan Raticate or Shiftry or even Umbreon, like those 3 do really well against Spiritomb. So having at least one of those on your team, is a and in your 3 maybe would be a good idea if you expect them to run Spiritomb.
Okay.
Another option
Thank
you
you.
can also do, actually, if you are worried about the 3 dark lineup, running a 3 psychic lineup yourself, this doesn't necessarily just go for your team, but any 3 psychic team, you should expect them to lead a dark type at least one of the 2 games. So depending on which one you feel like they're going to lead, if they want to lead a dark type in the first game as the safer pick, you can lead Toxicroak in the first game to kind of counter their dark type and force them to switch so you get switch advantage. Or you can
Yeah,
run
we
your own
we
dark type as a lead as well and just play it out that way. And that was my strategy going into 3 dark teams. I would usually lead Drapion in with Toxicroak and then either Xatu or Alolan Raichu in back. And because of Infestation and Aquatail, I'd burn off at least 1, maybe even 2 shields before they can get off one of mine. And I just play around that way.
yeah we talk about this early in the DMs, and sounds like a good strategy because Drapion just burns a lot of shields, and I've already seen people burning 2 shields only on Drapion, and so bringing a high damage Pokemon like Raichu sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I mean,
I had
I think there's a lot of options, and I think the main thing is just to get practice and get familiar with what works for you and what doesn't.
I had another question, but I don't really know if it's already too much from me. Maybe I should stop. I don't know.
We can do one more question, and then after that, I think we'll move on to the next team.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So
I just
what's
wanted to
your last
know
question? All right, go ahead.
if I if I if I were to test a balanced lineup like a 2-2-2, I was considering maybe using Poliwrath or Lucario because I have a matchup Poliwrath, but doesn't seem like the most efficient maybe moveset. There are some people that prefer Bubble, so I don't know what you
I
guys think.
think that Poliwrath and Lucario are both good options for the last fighting slot. I think if I was running a 2-2-2, it would definitely be one of those two. I wouldn't really be considering anything else. And there's definitely trade-offs between Bubble and Mudshot. Both are good options, and you somewhat have to look at your team composition and see what coverage you need better, the Mudshot or the Bubble coverage. Do you have anything to add on that, Polly?
Just that Bubble is the one that's able to beat Zatu one shield, and it's able to tie Extrasensory, Earth Power, Claydol in the one shield, whereas Mudshot loses. So
Well,
those are
the one
Yeah,
thing with
but
Mudshot though is if you're worried about Claydol, you can run Mudshot Hydro Pump, and then it's bait dependent. But if you get a bait against Claydol running the Mudshot Hydro Pump, then you're able to win.
I think Mudshot and Hydro Pump beats Sadu, but I'm not really sure. In the 1-1 shield.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
something you'll have to kind of look into the Sims more, and then see which option you think best fits your team composition and what coverage you need. So on that note, we're going to move on to the next team.
Okay.
I will say I just send that real quick, and it's bait dependent, just like you mentioned about the one shield Zatu and the Claydolls matchups are bait dependent. Yep.
Thank you very much, guys.
All right, so the next team is BGBOF X Church 816, and they have Zatu, Alolan Raichu, and Claydol, Shiftry, and Alolan Muck, and Toxicroak. So the first thing I'm noticing is that both of their darks are going to lose to Drapion.
Yep.
What else are you guys seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I don't like my darks to both lose to the same, just because it makes it a little easier for my opponent to pick which dark they're going to bring. Drapion, I mean, he is able to, like, I guess, have some coverage against Drapion in that Claydol beats it, and then Alolan Raichu can beat it if it gets the bait. But generally, I think I prefer say like a Alolan Raticate or Umbreon, or Drapion, like in that spot.
Sorry, just 1 sec.
I'm going to a meeting.
So,
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
hey,
I saw you guys first analysis of Nightmare teams. I was prepping for regionals at that time, so but I did see it, and I saw some of you guys' opinions on Bite Muck. The one thing that I did notice about the Bite Muck though is that pretty much Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, Hypno pretty much can't touch it. And yeah, if you can play the bait switch game really effectively, either by leading with it or countering anything that jumps in to try to kill the Toxicroak, it's pretty effective.
okay, I missed that. So your Alolan Muck is running Snarl then, not Poison Jab.
No,
it's
he's running Bite.
Yeah, I'm running Bite
Oh,
with the
Bite.
Acid Spray. Acid
Okay,
Spray,
so I want to
okay.
hop in. If you want to run a dark fast move on Muck, you should go with Snarl. Because Snarl still gets the job done. It gives you that dark fast move to better handle the Psychic types, but it has better energy gain. With Bite, it's just so slow that you're getting off hardly any charge moves, and you're like completely hopeless against the other dark types. Granted, Snarl doesn't have that good of a matchup against the other dark types,
right?
but Bite's just even worse because Bite gets resisted by dark types, and you're getting off like basically no charge moves.
The only reason why I kind of play with it is because if you can, I'm pretty sure that Dark Pulse and Acid Spray is the same energy requirement. And if you can get off, it's kind of like a 50-50. Either you get them with the Acid Spray, at least lower the defense, you know what I'm saying, to where Bite would be effective. Or you can kind of nuke them with the Dark Pulse if they're not expecting it. It's like I said, it's real bait switch. But
I mean, you can do like the same thing with Snarl and just
okay,
get
I
off your
normally use
charge moves
Drapion.
faster.
I normally use Drapion, but trying stuff out.
I mean, if you switch Muck to Drapion, then your team isn't as weak to an opposing Drapion.
Right.
Switching out the Shift to Eradicate might even be a better idea for that.
That was another thing I was going to ask about is the Alolan Raticate. I was, saying going to ask about that before to the 100K. So
I don't know if I'd want to run my Muck with Bite with the Eradicate, though. I probably still would prefer Poison Jab. And, you can still do the whole baiting thing with it. Jab charges faster than Bite, too. Again,
But
you're less vulnerable in general versus the other darks.
basically what I'm worried about is Xatu on the back end because of how Ominous Wind works against the other Psychics. So
Right.
it's like I said, sometimes late in games, Xatu, maybe the IVs are kind of low or something like that. Bite can pretty much erase it. Like, and it's pretty much a mistake-free damage considering the half a second. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Poison Jab
Snarl-
should give you similar results, too, though.
Right.
But if
Okay.
you really want, but Snarl will give you similar results. But
Snarl
probably
would
better.
probably be better just for the energy advantage.
Yeah, because
Okay.
Snarl's still giving you super effective dark damage there, but it's giving you better energy gains. So if you really want your Muck with a dark fast move, then run Snarl.
Okay.
That being
Because
said,
basically what I'm
Go on.
what I'm prepping for is because since I'm running a 3-1-2, obviously feel like I can be weak to certain fighting, you know what I'm saying, depending on switch advantage and stuff like that. So, especially with the shift tree and that was kind of my worry. Taking on the Alolan Raticate means the switch has got to be perfect. Toxicroak comes in or anything, I gotta get out of there. So
wait, so you're worried about fighting an Alolan Raticate? You said.
like it taking on, like if I wanted to add a Alolan Raticate to this team, like let's say in place of Alolan Muck.
Yeah.
Essentially, I become weaker to fighting. You know what I'm saying? Shiftry's bad enough.
You do got the 3 psychics too.
I mean,
And you got
yeah,
Yellow Croak.
Yeah, you have 3 Psychics and Toxicroak, so I mean,
okay.
3 Psychic teams shouldn't be that worried about fighting. 3 Psychic teams are going to be more worried about Dark types, opposing Dark types. And if you're running Muck with Bite, then your Muck is going to lose to every other Dark type, I think, besides a Spiritomb. Which means, it just makes you a lot weaker to opposing Dark types than if you're running Bite on your Muck.
Okay.
Whereas if you're running Poison Jab on your Muck, then your Muck is able to generally beat Alolan Raticate. It's going to beat Shiftry. It's going to have, I think, does Muck beat Umbreon or not? I don't remember.
Yeah. So with Poison Jab. Poison
right,
Jab, Sludge Wave.
Right, so you're going to be able to beat Umbreon, and you're going to have a better matchup against the other dark poisons. That being said, regardless if you're running this Muck plus Shiftry combo, like we said, they both lose to Drapion. So if you wanted to improve your Drapion matchup, you could either swap out the Muck for a Drapion, or you could swap out either Muck or Shiftry for an Alolan Raticate.
Okay, cool. Because I normally play with Drapion, but I was just some stuff, so I appreciate it. And then as far as alternatives to Xatu, I feel like it's a must run. Yeah,
I wouldn't swap out Xatu. Xatu's become pretty essential here. Like Toxicroak is the most used mon, and Xatu's the second most used mon. So I would advise against swapping out Xatu because it has such a good Toxicroak matchup. It beats Claydol, it beats Shiftry, it beats any of the other fightings really. So it's just a really
its biggest advantage. Sorry?
The air slash damage can actually pick you up if you wins in the late game too.
Yeah. Definitely. And the biggest advantage of Xatu is that it pairs really well with either of the other psychics for people who want to go 2-2-2. We kind of touched on that earlier, but you can't really run, or it's not really great to run Alolan Raichu along with Claydol because they both get walled by Shiftry. So generally you want one of those running with Xatu if you're going 2-2-2.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other nice thing with Xatu is it has that neutral flying damage against all the dark types.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if I wanted to take out one of the psychics and do a 2-2-2, what fighting would I add and what psychic would I remove?
So we kind of talked about that in the last team, and the fighting we would suggest adding would either be Lucario or Poliwrath, and the psychic you would drop would either be Claydol or Alolan Raichu.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it, y'all. Thanks.
So that's definitely an option, but I think most of us would agree that we tend to prefer running the 3 psychic team over a 2-2-2. Like, both are good options, but we personally prefer the triple psychic.
Yeah, I've been playing all 3-1-2 in all my prep tournaments and all of that stuff. So I've been doing 3-2, and it's more comfortable for me too, especially now that Claydol has Earth Power. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I was back and forth between 3D and 3P, not really sure which one I'd end up running in my tournament. And then when Claydol got Earth Power, and now it's able to beat some of the darks, that just sort of sealed it for me.
Right.
But yeah, anyways, just to sum up, we would suggest switching that Bite on your Muck and possibly dropping one of your darks in favor of Drapion or Alolan Raticate.
Okay, cool. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Now we are
Alright, Paul.
moving on to the triple dark team. So our first team for review is Kappa Cuck's team. He's running Xatu, Alolan Raichu as the psychic types, Toxicroak as the fighting, and then Acid Spray Alolan Muck with Umbreon and Spiritomb. So Spiritomb is the standard third dark in your 3D teams, and then depending on what other two darks you have, you can play around with having Spiritomb as a lead or a safe switch.
I mean, I think this is pretty solid for a triple dark team.
I think if anything, the odd one out is probably Umbreon. Too familiar with all of its matchups, but I believe it's generally worse than the other darks, at least when you compare them to each other.
Umbreon has a pretty similar matchup spread to Alolan Raticate, with the one caveat that it loses to Alolan Raticate.
Does it take on like Shiftry and the Dark Poisons?
Right, so it loses to Shiftry just like Alolan Raticate does, and it beats the Dark Poisons just like Alolan Raticate does.
Yeah, it's the head-to-head, and then also one argument that was made early on was that is the additional bulk just more opportunity for Tox to farm. But generally it's just the head-to-head.
Yeah, the head-to-head is the big trade-off. Obviously, Umbreon has the Dark Fast move, which means it can maybe farm against Psychic types a little bit more. And then it's a little bulkier, so it has pros and cons against Tox. Like Justin said, it can be farmed by Toxicroak more in like the mid game, but in the late game, that bulk for like a late game Tox matchup can be helpful.
I've gone back and forth between Raticate and myself. I do like how Umbreon is able to tank a power-up punch from some of the other fighters. Whereas Alolan Raticate, you kind of are forced to shield in the early game. If that's your only dark, and say you've already seen a psychic, and so you're trying to save Alolan Raticate, you can't afford to even take a power up punch. So I do like that about it. But this is a good team.
I agree. All right, let's move on to the next team then.
So Siri U, Xatu, and Wobbuffet, then Drapion, Umbreon, Spiritomb, and then Toxicroak.
So to start out with, Wobbuffet is unfortunately just not good in this meta. So I would say drop Wobbuffet and look to add in either Alolan Raichu or Claydol in that spot.
And I think that team's set if you do that. So you do have Drapion and Umbreon both, as well as Spiritomb, of course, all losing to Alolan Raticate. But some of those matchups are really close. So, I mean, I think it gets back to, sort of like your team composition interest, where it on the surface, it does appear, a little weak to Alolan Raticate. But those are still two really good darks in Umbreon and Drapion. And, you could potentially play around that. If you don't like that, then maybe you could opt for Shiftry or Alolan Raticate in place of Umbreon. If you want a little more coverage there, either with the Mirror or Shiftry, which beats Alolan Raticate.
Yeah, I would agree with that because, swapping that Alolan Raticate for Umbreon just makes your Alolan Raticate matchup a little better.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something else?
Nope. Yeah, but definitely swap out Wobbuffet. That's the big one.
Yeah, if you swap out Wobbuffet, you have a solid team regardless. and then it's just kind of a little bit of like nuanced like what coverage you want with the rest of your team. But yeah, I think if you swapped out Wobbuffet, you have a solid team. I would probably say to swap Umbreon to Alolan Raticate for that slightly better Alolan Raticate coverage, but you could totally run it as is if you want.
Yep, I agree. So next, it's Smogon Devo.
Yeah.
Xatu, Claydol, Acid Spray, Alolan Muck, Alolan Raticate, Spiritomb, and Toxicroak. Do you have
You're
anything?
on here, right?
This is just an experimental one I was messing around with the other day. Just trying to fit Claydol into 3D.
So do you want to talk about it a little bit first?
Yeah, the idea is pretty simple. You Tomb, and then obviously you have to go Croak. Your Darks, you pick the two that pair best. Really pair best because Muck can pick up the win versus Shift and Rat. The other alternative is Shift and Drape, I like. And then the Psychic that you have to include is Xatu. And then you can play around with the Claydol slot, I find. Alolan Raichu, which is what I think I prefer. Trying to fit in the Claydol. At first I swapped out, but then I was finding Shift Tree was a huge problem, obviously.
Wait, and so the team you were running before was you had Alolan Raichu in place of Claydol and Shiftry in place of Alolan Muck, right?
Yeah, that's the one I think I'm going to go with. I was more so just trying to mess around with Claydol and see if I liked it on a 3D lineup.
Right.
I do like it by adding Claydol and then swapping to a Poison rather than having the Shift Mirror. I do like that move. Give you a little bit more coverage against opposing Shift Trees.
Yeah.
I think it's just sort of, are you an Alolan Raichu fan and just love that, electric charge move spam, or do you?
That's probably it. I've come to just use Raichu a lot now, especially in my lead situation. So it was hard to drop it to try Clay. A video right now featuring a bunch of Claydol matches, so I'm hoping I can at least help other people out with it, especially with Earth Power.
Yeah.
That it doesn't contest any of the other Psychics.
Aside from walling Alolan Raichu. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it can with the extra sensory Earth Power, it can like barely beat Hypno in no shields.
Right. It can get close to Xatu, especially like depending like later on the game too. I've actually tied with a few Xatus in some of my scrims. With power and landing the gyro ball.
Nice.
End up losing.
Yeah, I think Claydol really helps some team comps that just I think we've covered a few, but definitely some team comps where, like say both your Darks are kind of weak to Alolan Muck or something like that. Having Claydol in there can really help offset that those matchups, those bad matchups. But I think with your setup, you kind of have some flexibility. So it's kind of like whether or not you prefer Alolan Raichu or Claydol.
But I totally agree with that.
Just before we move on, we have a message from Twitch chat. They want to know if Blaziken with Blast Burn and Blaze Kick now is good to put on a team, and what we think of it as options.
Just a word stroke.
Yeah, so a few people in my remote tournament lobby were running Blaziken because our tournament started yesterday, and I'm just not really sure why, to be honest. Because Blaziken is like pretty frail, so it still gets beat down pretty hard by all the like main Toxicroak counters like Xatu and Claydol mostly, and it has like a pretty bad Toxicroak matchup too. it's just a little too fragile. In that I don't think that Blast Burn is really helping it that much. It's slightly more relevant, but honestly, the more important move for it seems to be Blaze Kick, just because it's lower energy. But either way, it just doesn't seem like it really cuts it here. Do you guys have anything to add, Brandon or Justin?
No, I'd agree with that. You know, I mean, also losing the bubble Polyrath with shields doesn't help either. You know, so I really don't see the advantage of running that over, say, a Polyrath or Lucario if you're looking to add a second fighter.
The only merit I can see running it is if you expect the team to have Alolan Raticate, Shiftry, and then maybe
I
something
expect
with
the
low
team to have
health.
what? You cut out.
Alolan Raticate, Shiftry, and then as your 2 Psychics, and then 2 Darks, and if they ran a 2 Fighting with Lucario and Toxicroak as well. That is
I mean, wouldn't you still prefer Toxicroak there?
Yeah, you would. I'm just saying, like, on the off chance that you had your Toxicroak taken down, or you ran double fighting with Toxicroak and Blaziken, that's probably the one situation where Blaziken would be slightly better.
That's like oddly specific though, and even then, I'm not sure that Blaziken is really that much better than Poliwrath or Lucario.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, the only matchup flip that it sort of has advantage over Poliwrath is the Shiftry matchup. But, you know, I just think it's a little too frail. Poliwrath has a lot more bulk.
Yeah, and Poliwrath picks up like that better Claydol matchup, for example.
And and the bubble beating Zatsu and the one shield's big. So I think Poliwrath just has a few like sneaky wins and shield scenario specific wins, but that can really play huge. And not to mention like an energy differential situation where Zatsu is coming in like a little late, and now all of a sudden the Poliwrath has nearly an ice punch like in the tank.
Right, I agree with that.
Yeah. Maybe another cup.
Yeah, I mean, I think Blaziken with both Blaze Kick and Blast Burn would have been even better in Kingdom Cup.
Definitely,
having those faster charge moves, that would have been like the place for it. Like, it was already quite good and popular, but with both Blast Burn and Blaze Kick, I think it would have shined even more.
Yeah,
for sure.
We ready to move on to the next team?
Yep.
I think it's Joe Pal 30. Zatsu, Claydol, Alolan Raticate, Drapion, Spiritomb, and Tuck.
I mean, I really like this team for a triple dark. Again, it's kind of similar to the team that like me and Brandon are running, where it's a little soft to Alolan Raticate, but again, that's something you can play around.
It seems pretty soft to Alolan Raticate to me. To play around it is Croak, because it can potentially beat everything if you count the mirror besides Croak.
Yeah, it's similar to that team that we talked about earlier. The 3P team, except for instead of Alolan Raichu, now you have Spiritomb. So that's a slightly more favorable matchup for opposing Alolan Raticates. But I mean, you don't have as many options against it opposing Alolan Raticates, but bringing two of the best darks, I have a hard time saying, pick one.
And the other thing is, like, I mean, Zatsu, Claydol, and Drapion all lose to Alolan Raticate, but they all take, like, a decent amount of health from it.
Definitely.
So, you're not completely hopeless, but you're right that the team is kind of soft to it. So I guess it's kind of a choice of, do you want to just play around it, or do you want to make your team stronger against it? And if you wanted to strengthen against it, then probably you'd either swap out Alolan Raticate for Shiftry, or you drop Drapion in favor of Alolan Mug.
Yep. Yeah.
You guys have anything else to add, or do you want to move on to the next team?
No, I think that covers it. Yeah.
Now we're moving on to the 2-2-2 team, so Tristan, you want to introduce it?
Yeah, so Tambio's team is first. He has Xatu and Claydol for the Psychics, Alolan Raticate and Drapion for the Darks, and Toxicroak and Poliwrath for the Fightings. I mean, I think this team is pretty solid from first glance. He's running the best two Darks, but because he has double fighting in the mirror. I think that's solid Alolan Raticate coverage.
Yeah, he's probably fine. I don't really think it's an issue, but it might come up like versus an Alolan Raichu. Can work. Like he has a ton of options for it, but that's the biggest thing I'm seeing. Xatu, it can go up against Drapion, it can go up against Toxicroak, beat the Poliwrath. Issue, he obviously has the coverage, but
Yeah, he's got
the Shiftry over Raditz possibility.
I don't think he used to worry about that. I mean, Claydol walls it really hard.
Right. No, I'm not saying it's an overbearing issue. It's just the only minor thing I can point out.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I think that one that walls it, one that beats it, and two that go pretty even is still pretty good coverage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty good 2-2-2 team. I like it.
Yeah. So the next team is Trainer Ramamko's revised team, which is Xatu and Claydol as the Psychics, Alolan Raticate and Spiritomb as the Darks, Toxicroak and Poliwrath as the Fightings. So what do you guys think about the Spiritomb in a 2-2-2 lineup?
I think
This team gets hard countered by Shiftry. Not hard countered, but work.
Yeah, 4 out of 6. Yeah, I think it's a little harder to work Tomb into a 2-2-2 because most people, when they're trying to do that, they definitely pair it with Alolan Raticate to sort of make up for Tomb losing to all the other Darks, bring the Dark to almost every other Dark. And then you also have the 2 Fighters to go along with that. But so I don't think there are like any major holes, like 5 out of 6, but there are definitely, for example, like Xatu has some pretty good matchups here. Shift definitely has some good matchups. Yeah.
I mean, do you think switching Wrath to Lucario would be helpful?
No, his best bet would be to swap his Spiritomb for like Drapion or something.
Right, but let's say he wanted to run Spiritomb though.
Good.
I'm just wondering if swapping Wrath for Lucario would help with that Shiftry matchup.
I mean, I think
should, because Steel resists grass.
Yeah, Lucario does beat Shiftry pretty handily. It doesn't really. Let's see. That could work. If he's set on running 2-2-2 with Tomb, I think that might be that would help cover two of the issues in Shiftry, and really help with Shiftry.
You can also,
Xatu, you're really not gaining a lot because Poliwrath can beat it in one shield scenario, just like Lucario.
he can also swap out the Raticate for Drapion, which also deals with Shiftry, and depending on the charge move, can deal with Shiftry even better. And it can also deal with Xatu a bit as well. But that's, you lose out on the bulk as well, so. Hi!
You lose out on the DPs a bit, but I suppose you have Claydol as well.
Sure.
Help out with that.
I mean, it also makes you a little weaker to a
Quite.
little Eradicate, but I guess because then both your darks lose to it, so you're relying only on your fighting for that.
Same with Claydol too. It makes your Claydol matchup worse because now Claydol has the mirror. It beats straight and beats both psychics. Although Wrath is, we talked about how it's like a CMP tie at 1 with against Bubble.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I like 3D tune lineups better than 2-2-2s, but I mean it can work. I mean there's not like any glaring holes here.
I agree. I think I prefer 3D2 lineups. But if you're not running 3D and you want to run Tomb, then it's definitely got to be in the 2-2-2 because running a triple Psychic with Tomb just makes you too weak to Darks.
Yeah. Cool. Can move on to the next one. Pokemon Master Nidox.
It's the same team.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. Yeah, it is the same team.
Maybe have some
And
commentary
so
about it, though.
his commentary is Bubble, Power Up Punch, and Ice Beam Wrath. He has an Attack Rat. He's running Earth Power Clay and Sucker Punch Spiritomb. He said his commentary weak to Shiftry and Rat. Mutt could replace Wrath or Tomb. He loves Tomb though. So I mean, I assume you've been listening to what we've said. It seems fine as is, but if you really love Tomb, then maybe you should consider running a 3 dark team and drop the Poliwrath in favor of a 3rd dark. Do you guys have anything else to add?
No, yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah. Maybe like Alolan Muck or something.
Yeah.
And then also, Sucker Punch. I'm sure you're aware of the differences between Feint Attack and Sucker Punch, but it is a little bit more bait dependent than Feint Attack. It can pick up a couple of extra wins that are bait dependent wins, but some wins that Feint Attack gets that aren't bait dependent now become bait dependent wins. So
I think Toxicroak is one of those that becomes bait dependent.
Yep, Toxicroak's probably the biggest one. Just some things to keep in mind.
All right, and then the last team we have is JRE Seawolf, and he submitted 7 Mons because he's not sure which way to go. So right now he has a Xatu, Claydol, and Alolan Raichu as Psychics, Alolan Raticate, Drapion, and Spiritomb as Darks, and Toxicroak as a Fighting, and doesn't know if he should go with a triple Psychic or triple Dark lineup. So what do you guys think?
You can really do either. All he has to do is figure out if he wants Claydol or not. 3D, and then if he wants to run 3P, just drop Tomb for Claydol. And then he has a good foundation for either.
Yeah,
really, I
talked
think
ab-
he's just debating Claydol or Spiritomb.
Yeah, we talked about both of these teams earlier. These team comps. The one that you guys are running, Tristan, as well as Valor Ash and Brandon, with 3P, Alolan Eradicate, and Drape with Tox. And then we've also mentioned the Tomb variant where you drop, say, like Claydol, and then keep Tomb in there. That one's a little weaker, I think, to Alolan Eradicate. But both of those setups can work.
One thing you
Yeah,
can
I think
also...
they're.
Sorry, go Tristan.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Go Tristan.
What were you saying?
The one thing I was thinking also is, depending on if he wants to bring Claydol more as a threat to a team of 3 or a team of 6, that's Alolan, Raichu, and Toxicroak, or even Alolan, Raichu, Toxicroak, and a second fighting type, that would kind of sway the opponent from not bringing 2 of those 3 on their team against him for the potential Claydol massacre. So if you want to run that and play mind games that way, you can run 3P. Or if you want to play it a bit, I guess, safer, run 3D with Tomb instead.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Claydol, and I'm a little more partial to the 3 Psychic lineup because it lets you run Xatu, Claydol, and Alolan Raichu, which I think are all really good Psychic types. But I also didn't look into the Triple Dark team as much because I decided from the get-go that I didn't really want to invest in a Spiritomb. So I kind of ruled that out, even though I knew that Triple Dark is a very good team composition. I just personally didn't consider it much. But if he has all of these as options, I mean, you can't really go wrong either way. And I think our conversation with It's Smogon Devo before showed that it does seem like if you're running the Triple Dark, that Xatu and Alolan Raichu do seem to be a little bit better as the Psychics, but it's still definitely viable if you run Xatu and Claydol.
For sure.
So yeah, there's a lot of options here, and it's hard for me to like recommend like a clear cut choice. But it seems like the one to drop would be one out of Claydol, Alolan Raichu, or Spiritomb.
Yeah, the 3D has a nice amount of flexibility with its darks, actually. I'm actually running it with Tomb, Rat, and Shiftry right now. Being an attack-weighted rat, so it takes on the muck, then really your biggest threat is opposing rats. So I figured the Shiftry slot covers that. Helps me out with all the Claydols that have been rising up.
Yeah, I think that's why we've also seen, somewhat of a transition from Alolan Muck to Shiftry to help with the Claydols. Maybe some concerns about attack rats and things like that.
Yep. But I mean, the biggest drawback you do get with Shiftry is that Xatu matchup.
Yeah, definitely. Xatu is really common too.
Yeah, so if you're running Shiftry, you're going to be dissuading Claydol a little more, but encouraging Xatu a little bit more.
That's where I think, like it's Smogon Devo mentioned, like having that Alolan Raichu that he was running might help a little bit with that.
I think Alolan Raichu can actually take the first Ominous Wind from full health too, so it's not even a horrible option if you have to tank that.
Right. Yeah, so you're right. Pairing that Alolan Raichu with the Shiftry helps with cover that Xatu a little bit better.
Yep.
So yeah, I think if you are running Shiftry in your 3D, then you definitely need Alolan Raichu. But if you're running Claydol, then Shiftry is not going to be as much of an option because you're going to want another Dark that has a better Xatu matchup. So probably like a Drapion instead.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Make sure we didn't miss any other teams. We got it looks like we got 2 more teams since the stream started. So we have Bell 8110 with a bubble, power up punch, ice punch, Polyrath. Drapion with bite, Aquatail, and sludge bomb. Alolan Raichu, Umbreon, Xatu, and a Hitmonchan with counter, Thunder Punch, and Power Up Punch. So the first thing I'm seeing is it's pretty weak to Toxicroak because Toxicroak beats both of their fighting types, beats both of their darks, and goes pretty even with Alolan Raichu. What else are you guys seeing here?
That's the main thing I'm seeing.
Yeah. Claydol also has some good matchups too. It can beat Drapion, Walls, Alolan Raichu, and
Thunder
beats
Punch
Hitmonchan.
too.
Yeah, exactly. The Thunder Punch on Hitmonchan hurts it there because it resists all of its moves. So, I mean, that's 4 out of 6. Unless you give Polyrath the CMP tie at 1 shield.
Right, so that means like a team of Toxicroak and well, I guess the only thing with Toxicroak paired with Claydol is they both lose to the Xatu.
Xatu, yeah.
And then the other thing is that an Alolan Raticate can beat both of their darks, and then also has good matchups with both of their psychics.
Yeah.
So potentially, like if they line up the Alolan Raticate against your Xatu, an Alolan Raticate, Toxicroak, Claydol team could be kind of a nightmare to deal with.
Yep. I think Tox is definitely the biggest hole, though, because every team's going to run Tox, not just in their 6, but Tox gets run a lot in 3s as well. So
Yeah, like probably like 70-80% of the time.
yeah, so I mean,
against a team like this, I think Tox is going to be run 100% of the time.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, I'd probably drop his Chan for a Croak then, and then maybe mess around with his darks.
I agree.
Yeah.
The dark still
And if
seems
you don't-
solid though, but it still loses to Alolan Raticate. But it's still, if he does want to run 2/2/2 and doesn't feel like
Yeah, the darks are
investing in
decent,
Raticate.
but I think the biggest change is if you drop Hitmonchan for a Toxicroak, your team like already is getting a significant upgrade.
Yeah.
That's
And I
for
will
sure.
say, like, if Toxicroak's just not an option for some reason, I'd almost be inclined to say pick one of the fighters and then pick up a Confusion user just to help with that Toxicroak matchup.
Yeah, and I would probably pick Polyrath personally. Polyrath, and then throw in probably Claydol. But like Bronzong or like a Legacy Hypno also work.
Yeah. And lastly, just TM that Drapion to Infestation. It's definitely the better fast move.
Yeah, and I guess they're running the Sludge Bomb kind of like Brandon did to give them that better Alolan Raticate coverage, which is definitely a viable option.
Yeah.
But just keep in mind that Crunch does give you better psychic matchups. Because I know I was watching through Brandon's video of his first tournament, and there was a couple times where, like, he ended up like winning the whole tournament, so it didn't matter. But there was a couple times where I was like, damn, like having Crunch there would have been really nice.
Doesn't Sludge Bomb Drapion still lose to Rat?
Yeah, I think it does. It just makes the matchup much closer.
I was just looking at it, and it's like, I think Crunch is around 50 HP left on Rat. Sludge Bomb gets it down to about 25. Still pretty favorable for Rat, though.
All right, and then next team is Operator 229, who's running Shift Tree with Razor Leaf and Leaf Blade, Legacy Shadow Ball Hypno, Lucario, Toxicroak with Counter and Mud Bomb, Claydol with Confusion and Earth Power, Umbreon with Feint Attack and Foul Play. So I'm assuming that there's some budget constraints here, based on the mons. Umbreon kind of needs Last Resort here. Otherwise, it loses to, I think, like all the other darks. Claydol, you can probably get by with just Earth Power. You are going to get walled by Xatu, which is kind of rough because Xatu's in almost every team. But you could definitely get by with it. But I would say switch that Confusion to Extrasensory, for the reasons that we talked about earlier. Toxicroak, if you're only running one move, that is the best move set. But you do lose out on that Sludge Bomb option to potentially nuke Xatu. And then that's the right move set for Shift Tree, which can get by with just one move. What else are you guys seeing here?
The thing that I see also is if Umbreon doesn't have Last Resort and there already are budget constraints, then swapping that out for Alolan Raticate for a 10k second charge move is already an improvement
Brandon,
to that team.
you're cutting out.
Swapping out Umbreon to Alolan Raticate for only a 10k second charge move is already an improvement to that team. So that's one suggestion I'd have. A second one is
right, and you can and they can just find like a weather boosted Alolan Rattata and evolve it, and it shouldn't be too much dust from there. Anyways, go on. What was your second point?
maybe even getting Xatu, and you can run a second move with Aerial Ace, but usually 95% of the time you're using Air Slash and then Ominous Wind. So if you want to sub that in as well, and then you can
I don't know. I feel like Xatu definitely needs the Air Slash because then you have nothing versus Darks if you manage to get a charge move. If anything, I'd probably tell him to swap out his Claydol for a Raichu, which is reasonably cheap too. Helps with his Xatu matchup as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, working in Alolan Raichu might be smart because I know, his opponent's not going to know his moveset, so maybe Claydol's just a bluff and he plans on, he or she plans on using Hypno the majority of the time, which is perfect. But the Toxicroak not having Sludge Bomb as an option and then Claydol only having Earth Power in addition to Shift Tree really makes him not have a lot of options against Xatu. So I think any way to discourage opposing Xatus might be helpful, especially for his Toxicroak, which is relying just on Mud Bomb. That's sort of at least my thought process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Do we have any other teams to go through, or that's the last one? I think that's the last one.
That's the last one that's not a regional team.
So we can cut it for
Okay.
today since we're already right at an hour and a half, and then we can do regionals another day this week. Just to make it 2
I'm just trying to see
seconds.
how many regional teams we have. I think it's only one or two. So it might be better to just do them real quick.
Yeah, we could do that. I see. You want me to just cover the first one I see?
Yeah.
Okay, it is from Holden Mac Groin. somebody could tag them. It is Lantern, Bastiodon, Azumarill, Venusaur, Lugia, and Metacham. The Azu is Ice Beam, Play Rough. And then they say deciding between Skarmory and Lugia. The main reason for running it is to bait the opponents into running Scar.
I mean, I don't know if Lugia is really going to bait the opponent into running Skarm, because you have the Lantern and the Bastiodon and Azu.
Yeah.
I mean, the big thing is Lugia has the unique thing in that it covers the grass types like Skarm does, but it also covers Metacham like a Ghost would. So it combines those two roles into one and lets you run a flex pick. So running Lugia is kind of what's allowing you to run Lantern here. Because if you weren't running Lugia and you were running Skarm instead, then your team would be kind of weak to Metacham, and then you might need to run a Ghost in place of the Lantern or the Bastiodon.
Okay, I'm here by the way, so.
Oh, hey. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with what Tristan said. Anything else you wanted to add?
Another thing I found was I was weak to Sableye. Lantern does win the matchup versus Sableye, same as against Skarmory, but
So
I don't think you're that weak to Sableye.
So Venusaur and Bastiodon win on just TDO, and then Azu wins because it resists foul play. I think you're pretty good against Sableye. Maybe it was just in the threes you were running, like,
maybe.
But you have some options.
Yeah, I mean, you have those three that all beat it, and then Lantern has, I don't remember, I think it might be a little IV dependent and shield dependent, but Lantern is like more or less goes even with Sableye too. So it's really only the Lugia and the Metacham that are afraid of Sableye.
Also, I guess because I have two waters, and Lugia, which is neutral to poison, Venusaur could give you some trouble.
Venusaur could give you some trouble because it does beat Bastiodon with shields in play, and it'll beat the Azu and the Lantern and have a mirror match. But Lugia does a pretty solid job against Venusaur. But if you were worried about Venusaur, then you could consider swapping out Bastiodon for Melmetal. Then you have Melmetal and Lantern overlapping.
Yeah.
I think you do have like a little bit of an issue to Gallade, however you say it. Glade beats Venusaur, Lantern, Bastiodon, Metacham, and can beat Azu if it's that break.
He is running Ice Beam on Azu though, so that helps.
That's one of the reasons why I'm running that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you are kind of limited to Azu and Lugia for your Gallade coverage.
Then again, another thing I like to do is try and bait my opponent into running something so it's a little more predictable. So my team does appear weak to, for example, Gallade. I could run a team that could potentially bait out some shields, possibly one-shot it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a generally solid team. I mean, the thing with like most of the team reviews we've done for like Nightmare or Tempest or any of the previous cups is that there's a handful of teams that seem to be well balanced, and then a lot of the other team compositions just start lacking against one of the main meta threats. But the thing with regionals is there's so many viable mons that it's hard. There's not like one or two standard teams. Like there's like a million different possible viable teams, and then even after that, you get other viable teams that are designed specifically to counter certain meta teams. So there's no like cookie cutter answer for regionals, and it's kind of, which is why I've been struggling with it, because it's a little bit of just like pick your poison, because you can make your team strong against a couple certain mons or a certain team composition, but then it ends up making you weak to something else. So there's no clear cut answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I appreciate your advice. So, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for submitting and tuning in.
Yeah.
We actually have 2 more Nightmare teams that were missed somehow, so you can just do those 2, and then we'll end the stream right there. So the first team is Alolan Raichu, Bronzong, Spiritomb, Drapion, Alolan Raticate, and Toxicroak.
Okay. With that set up, let's see, a little weak to Alolan Raticate, similar to some other teams we mentioned before. Yeah, it's similar to some like the one 3D team that we mentioned before, except for Zasu, I think, instead of Bronzong.
I will.
It's the main difference.
Okay, fine. Okay, goodbye. Okay, goodbye.
I think I'd prefer a different confusion user if they have other options. Or Zatu. I like Zatu.
Bless you.
A little more than Bronzong.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that's probably the main change I'd make. Bronzong for either Zatu, Claydol, or sorry, not Claydol, because they're running Alolan Raichu. So Bronzong for either Zatu or Hypno, maybe.
Yeah, probably. I mean, they can run as is though.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's not bad.
I would be inclined to swap Bronzong for Zatu, and then maybe do something to strengthen against Alolan Raticate. But I mean, if they wanted to run it as is, like it's perfectly functional.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the last team is Larissa Deniva, and they have Spiritomb, Alolan Raticate, Alolan Muck, Toxicroak, Zatu, and Hip. So that seems pretty solid to me. They have the Alolan Muck to help with the Alolan Raticate matchup.
Yeah, that seems solid. Just make sure the Alolan Muck has poison, so that it's serving like its role as that Raticate counter. But I like it.
The only thing to note is that, I mean, without Alolan Raichu, you could potentially use like Zatu as a safe switch against this team. I mean, I know Zatu loses to all the darks, but with its double flying set, it still does like decent damage.
Yeah.
But overall, seems pretty good.
Yep.
Alright, that's going to do it for today's stream. So, thank you to everybody who submitted their teams.
Alright, well, Beagle cut out, but I think he was saying that we're going to stream now because we just got through all the teams. So thank you to everyone who submitted and everyone who participated. And yeah, thanks for joining us. And like I said at the beginning, our next stream, which we're hoping to be later this week, if not, it'll be early next week, will be an initial meta-analysis for the Rainbow Cup. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you guys next time.